So I now call this meeting to order. I would like to welcome those in attendance tonight and listening in on phone calls. The Brookings County Planning Commission is a 9-member commission whose function is to recommend approval or disapproval of land use plans, zoning ordinance, subdivision plats, and amendments thereof. The Brookings County Commission. The commission makes its recommendation based upon adopted comprehensive plan for the physical development of unincorporated areas of Brookings County. As a matter of policy, all motions are made in the positive. After the motion is moved and seconded, it is open for debate. Those supporting the motion shall in turn give their reasons. Those opposing the motion shall then offer their reasons. After everyone has been given a chance to be heard, the commission shall recommend approval or disapproval based on the testimony and information presented. A simple majority vote of a quorum of members of the Planning and Zoning Board in attendance is required to forward the recommendation. Since we're having the meeting telephoned in, we're gonna do a roll call attendance tonight also. So Richard?
Present.
Well, excuse me, Bartley.
Present.
Davis. You can unmute your phone now.
Davis present.
Okay. Nelson.
Here.
Kleinjohn.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
McHugh.
Here.
Vanderwall.
Here.
Dietrich.
Here.
And Ford.
Here.
We have 9 members present.
Second agenda item is approval of minutes.
Move approval.
Motion Bartley,
Second.
second Dietrich. Richard, would you call the roll?
Dietrich.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Kleinjohn.
Aye.
Jensen.
Yes.
Bartley.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
McHugh. Did Mike, did you say aye? Okay. And Ford.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item number 3, items to be added to the agenda by commission members or staff.
I have nothing, sir.
Okay.
I have nothing additional.
Invitation for citizens to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Seeing none, disclosure of conflicts of interest relationships to the applicant or ex parte communication.
Go ahead.
I will be recusing myself for the Tom Sturzinger items on the agenda.
And your name? Tom, is this you?
Tom Davis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Need a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Vanderwall,
Second.
second by Kleinjohn. Call the roll.
Bartley.
Aye.
Davis. Nelson.
Aye.
Kleinjohn.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McHugh. Vanderwall.
Aye.
Dietrich.
Aye.
And Ford.
Aye.
Motion passes.
We will now convey as the Brookings County and Planning and Zoning Commission. Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment is a 9-member board which has the power to hear requests and variances, conditional uses, and appeals and special exemptions. The concurring vote of 2/3 of the attending members is necessary for approval of any action by the board. A 9-member board requires six votes. A 6-member board requires 6 votes. In accordance with Robert's Rules of Orders, we require a motion to approve a request before the request can be debated. As a matter of policy, all motions are made in the positive. The board, under specific powers granted by the state, shall authorize variances from zoning requirements where special conditions existing on the land will result in unnecessary hardship for the applicant. Financial disadvantage to the property shall not constitute proof of unnecessary hardship. Agenda item 2020 variance 002. Thomas A. Tufty for Tufty Brothers LLC has made an application 2020 variance 002 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for the variance Article 11, Section 11.01A, Agricultural District, Area Regulation Number 2, Front Yard. Minimum depth of front yard shall be 100 feet. A corner lot shall have 2 front yards. The property described is the south one half of the southeast 1/4 of Section 9, Township 109 North, Range 51W, Oslo Township. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Kleinjohn,
Second.
second by Vanderwall. Richard, would you read the staff report?
Yes. 2020 variance 002, Thomas A. Tufty for Tufty Brothers LLC has applied for variance to build a 60-foot by 88-foot pole shed with an 18-foot sidewall, 107 feet from the center of 216th Street, a variance of 43 feet. 216th Street is a Brookings County blacktop road. The required setback is from the center of the road. The buildable space on the property is limited due to the topography and shape and size of the lot. The property is long and narrow, and there is a waterway dividing the property from the east to west. The property was mined for gravel in the past and has been reclaimed, and slopes off where the gravel was mined. The lay of the land drops off towards the waterway, towards lowland and ponds. The balance of the ground is grassland, and there's a small amount of farm ground in the northwest corner. Public notices were published in the Brookings Register on April 21st and 28th, 2020, and the Volga Tribune on April 23rd and 30th, 2020. Letters were sent to the adjoining landowners, the Oslo Township Chairman and Clerk, and we did receive one comment, and I will mention them later. Here's the variance application. Customer site plan. Creek going along here. This is where the pond is. Drops off in this area here. Trees are back here, and it drops off over here into the southwest. It's proposed what his building would look like. beacon map. This is 216th Street. This is 463rd. This is the driveway right here. Going in, proposed location of the building be right here. At about 20 feet, 30 feet to the northeast of this building, the land slopes off all along here, back down towards the water, towards the ponds. Right here, it slopes off this way, and you get back towards this trees, it slopes down towards the creek also. This is just looking from the driveway, looking towards the west. This is looking towards the east, clear view there. This is looking straight north in from the driveway. This is looking off to the northwest towards the proposed building site where this temporary storage container is. This is where the wheel is, 107 feet from the center of 216th Street. Where the regular setback should be 150 feet is right here where the wheel is. Right there. This is the east side of the building. 2 stakes here. This is the west side, marking by the trees. A little re-rod there and another one there. This would be the northeast corner. Here's where it goes down towards the ponds right here. This is the pond. You can, right there, goes around, follows the water around, and goes off to a steep embankment. Follows that around. Just another picture going to east showing the topography of the lay of the land there. I did receive a letter that you received this evening also from Chad and Rhonda Washi that you received, so that was the only correspondence we received on the item this evening. And that's all that I have.
The applicant here, and would I like to step forward?
The applicant is on the phone. I will. Mr. Tufty, do you have anything to add?
Hello, I'm here.
Is there anything that you would like to add to Richard's finding of the facts?
No, report. To my report. We haven't done the findings yet.
To Richard's report?
My name is Tom Tufty, and I'm the partner with Tufty Brothers LLC with my brother Richard. This land's been in our family quite a while. As Richard pointed out, there was a gravel pit there that's been reclaimed, and then we put a shelter belt in. And when my mother passed away, and we're the estate, we pieced this 40 out. There's about 5 to 7 acres that's not either in CRP or rented out, and it's too small for big machinery to get in there. So we started a tree farm on this land, and at some point intend to keep on developing that as a wholesale tree farm. The building itself would help support that, as well as storage and other things ancillary with, a small ag operation. As Richard pointed out, the land itself kind of limits us where we can go to build this shed. The gravel pit is a constraint on one side, and then to go back further and meet the 150 feet, we've tried to tweak it in there between the trees and the gravel pit. You would have to take out quite a few of those trees, and then the land does go off quite sharply. And then in a summer like or a spring like last year, that creek actually, would probably be a little too close for comfort where we'd want to build if we had to go all the way back, to meet the angles for the 150 feet setback. We believe this does not cause any intersection view issues. It's at the high ground. There's no intersections there. And also those, as far as snow goes, those trees really stop the snow. So there really is no big snow drifts. And this building would not cause any additional ones. So having said that, as Richard pointed out, we respectfully ask for the variance for this building. Thank you.
Okay. Now we will go to the audience through the phones for opponents to this. Is there anybody against this? Seeing none, we will go to proponents. Is there anybody for this who'd like to speak on behalf? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion. Is there any additional comments or questions from any members of the board?
It appears here as we look at this particular piece of property that we've got some constraints as far as development, as far as this building is concerned with the creek and the setback requirements to make a use of the property. Now, it is 40 acres, is that correct? As I read it?
That is correct, yes.
So it could be a future building site with the trees, the pond, and the building would maybe be the first structure on the land that still allows developable land for a housing, for a house at some point if they decide to build on the 40 acres.
Correct. Yep. Would be
Seems to me
an
that-
accessory building.
Yeah. Seems to be a reasonable request.
Is there any other discussion from members of the board?
Do they have to sign the right to farm covenant on this, or is that just for their house?
That is just for a residence.
That's just for a residence.
So would they have to sign that if they want to build a house at some point?
Yes.
Okay.
I think another consideration to the Washi letter that we received that talks about understanding that the Tofties plan to construct a pole shed on the property north of it, but the Washies are concerned that if they expand their location with livestock, that certainly the Tofties need to understand that if it's a housing development, there could be an expansion of livestock across the street. So I think that's duly noted that they've made that comment. It doesn't restrict this particular request, but so that the Tofties know that the Washies have made that statement.
This is Tom Tufty. I talked with Mr. Washi, and he let us know that the potential for the feedlot operation, and my comment was, yeah, that's what the purpose of this is. It isn't for what our uses would be secondary, and so we do know that that's the plan, and as long as we would ever own the property, I'd be really surprised if, there would ever be plans to put a house there. So the points of being around the livestock operation and, growing up a farm, we know what that entails. And given, how much time we will be there and so forth for this building, we still felt it was reasonable on our part to continue to go on with that. But it's duly noted we understand what, his potential future plans are.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, Richard, would you read the finding of the facts?
I'll read the first one here, then the next one I'll just highlight the highlighted areas. And Brookings County zoning variance 2020 VAR 002, an application for a variance have been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission, acting as a Brookings County Board of Adjustment, a copy of the application being attached here too. Such application being made by Thomas A. Tufty for Tufty Brothers LLC regarding the following real property: the south half of the south half of the southeast 1/4 of Section 9, Township 109 North, Range 51 West, Osceola Township. After due notice, a public hearing have been held on the application on this 5th day of May, 2020. Number one, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment, hereby finding that the strict application of the Brookings County zoning ordinance would produce undue hardship, that such hardship is not shared generally by other properties in the same zoning district and the same vicinity, that the authorization of such variance would not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property and the character of the district, would not be changed by the granting of the variance. and that the granting of such variance is based upon reasonableness of demonstrable and exceptional hardship as distinguished from variations for the purpose of convenience, profit, and caprice. Number 2, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finds that the condition or situation of the property concerned or the intended use of the property is not so general or recurring in nature as to make reasonable, practical the formulation of a general regulation to be adopted as an amendment to the zoning ordinance. Number 3, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further findings that the written application of the petitioner demonstrates that special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or buildings in the same district, that literal interpretation of the provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of the ordinance, that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, and that the granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. Number 4, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finding that the reasons set forth in the application justify the granting of the variance, and that the variance is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, that granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of the Brookings County zoning ordinance, and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. Number 5, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further determines and conditions this variance upon the following special conditions or safeguards. A, shape and size of the lot is long and narrow with a waterway dividing the property running west to east. A portion of the property has been mined for gravel, and the mined area drops off to a pond lowland area directly to the east of the proposed site. The lay of the land drops off in the northwest corner of the proposed site. Brookings County Board of Adjustment, by at least 2/3 vote of its full membership, hereby grants the above petitioner a variance for the above described real property as follows. Build a 60 feet by 88 feet pole shed with an 18-foot sidewall, 107 feet from the center of 216th Street. This variance is specifically conditioned upon initial and continued compliance with all the conditions and safeguards in 5 above, upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. The Brookings County zoning director, if approved, is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent with the terms of this variance. If this variance is not used within 3 years of the date granted, it shall be invalid. Dated this 5th day of May, 2020. Vanderwall.
Aye.
Kleinjohn.
Aye.
Jensen.
Yes.
Dietrich.
Yes.
McHugh. Mike McHugh.
Aye.
Okay, is that yes, Mike?
Yes.
Bartley.
Aye.
Davis.
Yes.
Nelson.
No.
And Ford.
Aye.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Item number 2020, variance 003, Mary C. Walks has made an application to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for a variance, Article 5 District Requirements, Chapter 4.03 LP Lake Park District, Section 4.03.03, Density Area and Front Yard Regulation. Minimum lakefront of the property is described as Lot 28 of the east 20 feet of Lot 29 in Marvin Wade's subdivision of government lots 1, 2, and 3 in the northeast 1/4 section of Section 6, Township 112 North, Range 52W, Laketon Township, located at 228 South Lake Drive, Arlington, South Dakota 57212. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Dietrich,
Second.
second by Vanderwall. Richard, would you read the staff report?
Yeah, 2020 variant 003. Mary Walks has applied for a variance to build a 14-foot by 28-foot carport, post-frame carport attached to the west side of their lake cabin. The outer support post of the carport is 25 feet from the highest known watermark, a variance of 50 feet. The lake park lakefront setbacks are 75 feet from the highest known watermark. The proposed carport will meet the road and side setbacks. The proposed carport will not block the shoreline view for either of the adjoining property owners. The property is located in the floodplain, as noted on the beacon map, and the carport would be considered a non-substantial improvement and could be built in the floodplain. Things to consider are the shape and the size of the lot, as Marvin Wade subdivision was originally platted on May 24th, 1949. And it does meet the requirements of the Brookings County Comprehensive Plan, as stated in my report. Letters were sent to the adjoining landowners, the Laketon Township Chairman and Clerk, and we received no comment from the adjoining landowners or correspondence from anyone else on this issue. Public notices were published in the Brookings Register on April 21st and 28th, 2020, and the Arlington Sun on April 23rd and 30th. And the Brookings County Highway Department has no objections to this request. There's the variance application. The applicant's site plan. This is the road right here. Ditch has got a big setback area. This is the existing house. This would be the 14 feet it would come out, post frame, probably a post in each corner, and depending on the construction, either 6 or 8 feet apart for the post spacing, and the lake would be back here, and it's 25 feet from this post right here back to the high water mark. It does meet the side setbacks on each side. This is the beacon map showing the red area is in the floodplain right here. It'll be right here. This is the adjoining landowner, has plenty of room on that side. Come about right in the middle of this shed right here is where the 14 feet would come about. So it would stick, not obstruct the view on either side of the property. Just another view without the floodplain layer on it. This is looking east from the driveway. This is looking straight in here. Road is back here. Little shed right there to be come about right in the center of that. I'll show you in just a little bit. This is the back side. This is 25 feet from the watermark, highest known watermark. This is the wheels at 14 feet out from the edge of the house. This would be the west side of the carport. Just gonna miss the water meter and stuff right there. And this here is the looking towards the east at the 25-foot mark. As you can see, it's still even with the house, does not obstruct the view from the owners to the east. This is looking to the west along the lake shore, just turned around right there. And that's all that I have.
Is the applicant here or on the phone? Would you come forward?
Mary is on the phone.
I am on the phone.
Is there anything that you would like to add to Richard's report?
No, I feel that was explained well. It's just our request if we could have it done.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience or on the phone that is an opponent to this? I would like to speak. Seeing none, is there any proponents? Anybody for this? Seeing none, we will close the public portion of the hearing. Is there any additional comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, Richard, would you read the findings of fact?
Yes. I guess I'll just read the highlighted sections and we'll. Brookings County zoning variance 2020 VAR 003, an application for a variance have been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission, acting as a Brookings County Board of Adjustment. A copy of the application being attached here too. Such application being made by Mary Walks regarding the following real property. Lot 28 in the east 20 feet of Lot 29 in Marvin Wade subdivision of government lots 1, 2, and 3 in the northeast 1/4 of Section 6, Township 112 North, Range 52 West, Laketon Township. After due notice, a public hearing have been held on the application on this 5th day of May 2020. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further determines and conditions this variance upon the following special conditions or safeguards. A, shape and size of lot. Marvin Way subdivision was originally platted on May 24th, 1949, prior to the current Lake Park zoning regulations. Brookings County Board of Adjustment, by at least 2/3 vote of its full membership, hereby grants the petitioner a variance for the above described property as follows. Build a 14 feet wide by 28 feet long carport attached to their lake cabin with a support post to be 25 feet from the highest known watermark. The proposed carport will follow the FEMA floodline guidelines as the property is located in the floodplain. This variance is specifically conditioned upon initial condition compliance with all the conditions and safeguards in 5 above, and upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. Brookings County zoning, if approved, zoning director is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent with the terms of this variance. This variance is not used within 3 years of the date granted. It still shall be invalid. Dated this 5th day of May, 2020.
Richard, would you call the roll?
Yes, Kleinjohn,
Aye.
Jensen,
Yes.
Bartley,
Aye.
Davis, Nelson,
Aye.
McHugh,
Aye.
Vanderwall,
Aye.
and Dietrich.
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
motion passes.
Moving on to item number 2020 CU 011. Mike and George Cotton have made an application 2020 CU 001 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for a conditional use Article 11, Section 11.01, agricultural district conditional use permit number 19, seasonal retail stands excluding garden produce but including fireworks stands. The property is described as the west 317 feet of the east 357 feet of the west 800.81 feet of the south 332 feet of southwest 1/4 southeast 1/4 excluding H1 and H2 and N 643 feet of south 975 feet of the east, 357 feet of the west, 800.81 feet, and the east 40 feet of the west, 800.81 feet of the south, 332 feet of section of the southeast 1/4, all in section 14, township 110 north, range 51W, Volga Township, located at 638 East Highway 14, Volga, South Dakota 57071. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by McHugh,
Second.
second by Vanderwall. Richard, would you read the staff report?
Yes, 2020 CU 011, Mike Cotton and George Cotton have applied for a conditional use permit for a seasonal fireworks stand. The applicants were granted a 1-year conditional use 2019 CU 004 for a stand last year by this board. They are reapplying to continue their seasonal fireworks stand. The Brookings County Development Office and the Brookings County Sheriff's Department have received no complaints last year regarding the stand. The stand will be located at Mike Cotton's property at 638 East Highway 13, Volga, South Dakota. He will use a portable 10 by 20 building, and that will be anchored down to sell the fireworks out of. The hours of operation will be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And there's an existing driveway off Highway 14 that will be used for the entrance and exits. The applicant's site plan, hours of operation, which are included in this report, which shows adequate parking area and the entrance and exits in the building location. The applicants have had to have each own land next to each other, and the stand may be located on one or both parcels. The combined area of both parcels is 7 acres. Volga City Manager Jamison Barrett has no objections to the conditional use request, and John Ritterhouse with the South Dakota Department of Transportation has no objections. Letters were sent to the adjoining landowners, the City of Volga, the Volga Township Chairman and Clerk, and the South Dakota Department of Transportation. We received no comment from as of this time. Public notices were published in the Brookings Register on April 21st and 28th, 2020, and the Volga Tribune on April 23rd and 30th, 2020. There's the applicant's application. Look at site plan. This is the driveway coming in here. This is proposed location right here. His house is right over there. He's got a shop right here. The rest of this is this open land, open area right here, as we'll see on the beacon map. Here's the beacon map showing the driveway, proposed location of the stand. Adequate parking area right here, driveway and bare land, open land to the north here. It's the same parcel. This is two owners. This is George's, and the other little square piece is Mike's. This is just looking towards the east from the driveway on Highway 14. This is looking towards the west, clear sight there. This is looking north down the driveway. This is towards the end of the driveway parking area. Stand will be right in this area. This is a little trailer that they use that they anchor down in the four corners there. Board it up and can secure it. And that's all that I have.
Is the applicant present or on the phone?
He is on the phone, I believe.
I'm here.
Do you have anything to add to Richard's report?
Which is this? Who's talking? Is this Mike or George? Please identify yourself.
This is Mike Cotton.
Mike, okay, thank you.
Okay. Being no comments from him, is there any opponents in the audience or on the phone? Seeing none, is there any proponents in the audience or on the phone? Seeing none, we will close the public portion of the hearing. Is there any additional comments or questions from members of the board?
Is this just another 1 year, or is this more than that?
You can set it up for 3 years, or you can make it permanent. In the past, we've usually set them for the first year as a 1 year time frame. And sometimes we've gone 3 years. Sometimes we've gone 5 years, just depending on the location and the, or you can make it permanent.
And it's not transferable.
It is not transferable. If someone else can, once they cease operation of this, someone else would have to apply for it. So it's up to the
Richard,
board.
has there been any complaints about the operation?
No, there was no complaints from the city of Volga. I checked with Sheriff Stanwyck. The Sheriff's Department said no complaints last year. Our office had no complaints last year from it.
I'd like to make amendment to the motion to extend the conditional use for 5 years.
And we can put that we can state that in the findings.
You want to state it in the findings? Okay.
Is there any other additional comments or questions by the board? Hearing none, Richard, would you read the findings of the facts?
These I'll read in their entirety, and then the other ones will read in the highlighted areas as we get to them. Brookings County zoning ordinance, conditional use permit 2020 CU 011. An application for a conditional use permit having been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission, acting as the Brookings County Board of Adjustment, a copy of the application being attached here too. Such application being made by Mike Cotton and George Cotton regarding the following real property: the west 317 feet, of the east 357 feet, of the west 800.81 feet, of the south 332 feet, of the southwest, of the southeast, except H1 and H2, and the north 643 feet, of the south 975 feet, of the east 357 feet, of the west 880.81 feet, and the east 40 feet, of the west 800.81 feet, of the south 332 feet, of the southeast 1/4 except H2, all in section 14, township 110 north, range 51 west, Volga Township. After due notice, a public hearing having been held on the application on the 5th day of May, 2020. Number one, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment hereby finding that it is empowered to grant such a conditional use under the following sections of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. Article 11, Section 11.01, A, Agricultural District, conditional use permit number 19. Seasonal retail stand excluding garden produce but including fireworks stands. Further finding that the granting of the conditional use will not adversely affect the public interest. Number two, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further find and certifies that the following specific rules governing the conditional use requests have been complied with. Complied with South Dakota Codified Law 34-37 for fireworks. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finds that satisfactory provisions and arrangements have been made concerning the following were applicable. A, entrance to the property with proposed structures therein with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety, convenience, traffic flow, control, access in case of fire or catastrophe. Will use existing driveway and US Highway 14. B, off-street parking loading areas were required with particular attention to the items in A above and economic noise, glare, or other effects of special exceptions on adjoining properties and properties generally in the district. No on-street parking allowed, and use on-site parking. C, utilities refuge areas with reference to locations, availability, and compatibility must use dumpster service. Required yards and other open spaces, display area as shown on the site map. General compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the same district. And it meets the comprehensive plan requirements met for the agricultural district. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment further determines and conditions its conditional use upon the following special conditions or safeguards. A, the conditional use permit will be valid for only when fireworks can be legally sold, July 27th through July 5th of the calendar year. Hours of operation will be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. with extended hours of 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., July 2nd through July 4th. Must display state fire marshal permit and days and hours of operation per South Dakota Codified Law and a copy on file with the zoning office, and comply with Codified Law 3437 for fireworks. The temporary trailer must be anchored down. The conditional use permit expires May 5th, 2026. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment, at least 2/3 vote of its full membership, hereby grants the above petitioner a conditional use permit for the above described real property as follows: seasonal retail stand for fireworks in the agricultural district. This conditional use permit is specifically conditioned upon an issued and continued compliance with all the requirements and conditions in 3 and 4 above, and upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. If approved, the Brookings County zoning director is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent with the requirements of this conditional use permit. If this conditional use permit is not used within 3 years of the date granted, it shall be invalid. Dated this 5th day of May, 2020.
If you go up a little bit more there, Richard, to A on that. If we're going to go out for 5 years on this, do we want to include the New Year's legal fireworks sales time?
I don't believe the applicant wants to do that. We can ask them, but they did not indicate that last year. Mr. Cotton, do you want to include the New Year's sale days for selling fireworks?
No, we do not. That license is an extra bunch of money, and we're not going to deal with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Richard, would you call the roll?
Jensen,
Yes.
Bartley,
Aye.
Davis, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Nelson,
Aye.
Yes.
Fine John?
Aye.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we heard
Yes.
you. McHugh,
Aye.
Vanderwall,
Aye.
Dietrich,
Aye.
and Ford.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item number 2020 CU 009, Tom Sturzinger has made an application 2020 CU 009 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for a conditional use, Article 11, Section 11.01, an agriculture district, conditional use number 4, sand and gravel or quarry operation, mineral exploration and extraction. The property is described as the northwest 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and the northeast 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52W, to include cemetery and southwest 1/4 of southeast 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and east 1/2 of southwest 1/4, northwest 1/4, southeast 1/4, southwest 1/4, northeast 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and west 1/2 of the southwest 1/4 of the south 1/2, northwest 1/4 of Section 12, Township Range 111 North, Range 52W, Windsor Township. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Diedrich.
Second.
Second by Kleinjohn. Richard, would you read this? Oh, Mr. Davis is recusing himself from this one, so Mr. Erickson, you will go to the podium for this. Mr. Davis is released.
Mike is back there. Roger, yes.
Okay. Richard, would you read staff report?
Yes, 2020 CU 009. Tom Sturzinger has applied for an application for conditional use number 4, sand, gravel, or quarry operation, mineral exploration and extraction, to mine gravel on the above described real property. Tom Sturzinger is from Taunton, Minnesota, and will be the mining and crushing operator. The proposed mining will take place in 2 separate locations, Site 1 in Section 13 and Site number 2 in Section 12. The operator's site plan, business plan, operations, hours of operation, reclamation plan were included in this report. The proposed mining will be in 2 separate sites. Site 1 will be on the northwest and northeast quarter of Section 13 on the south side of Brookings County Blacktop Highway, number 6, which is 204th Street. And Site 2 will be in Section 12 on the north side of Brookings County Blacktop Highway, number 6, 204th Street. The applicant will apply for a driveway permit from the Brookings County Highway Department for a new driveway at the top of the hill for the site number 2, as the current driveway is located at the bottom of the hill. Entrance and exits to the mining sites will be off Brookings County Blacktop Highway number 6, 204th Street. The hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. During the mining process, a berm will be constructed along the natural waterway to keep the soil and sediment from entering the water. And the first occurrence of aquifer map shows the proposed mining area to be in the Zone B with the presence of sand and gravel, which is generally less or equal to 50 feet, 0 to 50 feet below the land surface. The gravel layer to be mined is approximately 6 to 15 feet in depth, and the mining will be done above the water table. Refueling of the mining equipment will be done on site with the fuel storage units having containment structures and located away from the active mining areas. The reclamation plan is to stockpile the soil, and once the mining is complete, replace the topsoil back on the ground and seed it down for pasture. The proposed site number 1 and 2 show signs of mining activity in the past, and the Brookings County Development Office and the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources have no records on file for the above described real property for those mining operations. The applicant will need to apply for a mining permit for the proposed mining sites from the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources and abide by their standards and requirements. East Dakota Water Development District has reviewed the applications and documents provided by the applicant. And the applicant also has applied for conditional use 2020 CU010 or conditional use 5A for a rock crusher to process the mined gravel on the site, in which you will be hearing the same request tonight after this one. Our office has reviewed the site and reviewed the documents and made a site visit to the proposed location. Public notices were published in the Brookings Register on April 21st and 28th, 2020, and in the Volga Tribune on April 23rd and 30th, 2020. Letters were sent to the adjoining landowners, the Brookings County Highway Department, the Brookings and the Windsor Township Chairman and Clerk. We have received several correspondences that the board has received also as they come in, so you have those in your packet. Here's the conditional use permit. This is his site plan. North is to my right, your left here. This would be the pasture land on the north side of the highway, starting up here and then venturing up to the north here a little ways. This is the old mining area. This is to the south across the road. This is the cemetery on top of the hill. This is already proposed to put the new driveway in for access to this area. The current driveway is down right here at the bottom of the hill. Mining activity would be back in this area to clean this area up. Just shows the beacon map again, showing here's his road coming in, proposed mining area, working way north up to this area a little bit, depending on the gravel layer in the profile up there. This is his site plan and hours of operation, excuse me. This will just show the separate parcels, and this has the aquifer layer on it with the lighter gray area being 0 to 50 feet coming in down around this area, around right here, right there. This is just the west parcel of that. Oh, this is the northwest quarter, section 13. Still the same map, just showing the light gray aquifer area, or the sand and gravel area right here. This is going across the road to the north to the other parcel, and the west parcel. This is looking at from the entrance going into the south site in section 13. This is looking towards the west. This is looking towards the east here. This is the gated entrance going into the cemetery. This is looking from the driveway, a little bit east of the driveway back to the proposed, what you could see from the road, what was the old mining site right there. This is looking from the driveway towards the west, towards the proposed new site of the driveway for the mining in section 12, right here, just on the other side of the property line. That fence is the property line. This is looking from the existing driveway down at the bottom of the hill, looking towards the northeast, towards the proposed or the old mining area that was done previously. This is just looking straight north from the road, back on to the site number 2, I'll call it. So, and that's all that I have.
Would the applicant please step forward? State your name and if you have anything to add to pictures.
Tom Sturzinger. We're going into old mine sites. So on the south side, the cemetery, it's already existing pit. I know there's no records, but in the past it has been mined out. So we'll need to clean up the pit site. Been used as there's quite a bit of garbage in it right now. So it'll have to be cleaned up before we can start excavation after we clean out the pit. Because of the footprint it has, it'll take probably 2 years, possibly 3, depending on what materials we can find there and how much space is available to lay it down. But we're not going any closer to the cemetery. The cemetery is what limits has been dug out. In fact, it'd be nice to, if we had any overburden, to bring back into the inslopes of the cemetery, protect it. And after we finish cleaning the south side up with available material, then we're gonna, and it's seeded down, then we'll go over to the north side and go up against another bank that was previously excavated years back, and then continue going north.
Okay. Okay, well, that should do it for you for now, for a minute, and I'll open the public hearing part here, I guess. We're gonna start with the opponents. Please limit yourself to 5 minutes, and please refrain from repeating comments that have been stated. The board is looking for new information, so if somebody's already said it, please state whether you concur or disagree with the previous statements and add your new information. So anybody on the phone or in the audience that's opposed, step forward, state your name, and give your reasons.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Jacobson, and you're on behalf of the Oakwood Zion Cemetery. And I'd just like to request that if the conditional use permits to mine and crush rock on the property surrounding the cemetery, and that specifically would be parcel ending in 13,100 and 12,405. If those were to be granted, that the board require some conditions be met and made available to those concerned prior to approval and before work would commence. First, that a study be commissioned by a PE professional engineer to determine that proper setbacks and backsloping requirements are determined and measurable to assure that these and future mining and crushing operations do not cause damage to the cemetery property. Second, that equipment, materials, and other items associated with the mining operations be stored at a reasonable distance from the cemetery borders, just as not to create an eyesore when viewed from the cemetery property. Number 3, that the mining and crushing operations be ceased when ceremonies are being performed, conducted at the cemetery property, such as funerals, memorials, Sundays, which it looks like there was no plan to mine on Sundays, and official holidays to ensure a respectful environment for those attending those events or paying their respects. Number 4, that dust control measures be put in place to control the dust on the driveways used adjacent to the cemetery property. It's not our intention to limit progress or anybody's willing to make a living on this endeavor. However, it is our position that cemetery property should be provided the same considerations that would be given to a property that has full-time private residents. As the caretaker of the Oakwood Zion Cemetery, I feel it's my responsibility to maintain and uphold a peaceful resting place for those buried there. Over the years, there has been a lot of anxiety regarding the gravel pit proximity to the cemetery boundaries, expressed both by family members of the people buried there on the property, as well as those who intend to be buried there in the future. I would love an opportunity to be able to provide assurances to those concerns, and I believe that this board has the opportunity to address these concerns for future generations by adopting our request if the permits are granted. I have no further comments other than there is already a dust issue there. There are current mining activities on the property on the south side of the road, so we do have trucks going in and out. So we do have a dust issue that we deal with currently. Thank you.
Is there any other opponents?
My name's Jared Thomas. My wife and I are adjacent landowners. I've read through the comments that you've all received. I agree with the comments. I have several personal reasons myself why I wouldn't want to necessarily be a part of it or near a gravel pit, but my biggest concern is the application is not complete, and I think a lot of the confusion and the frustration from several of the landowners, adjacent landowners, is we don't fully understand the extent of this mine. You're allowing the conditional uses for a section of land to potentially be mined for minerals, but I know that the contractor, the homeowner, the landowner has a good idea where that vein of gravel is. They've done inspections. They have a good understanding what that is, and I feel like for you guys to have a proper review of a conditional use application, you should have a better idea of what the extent of that conditional use is, as opposed to saying, we plan to work in this section of land over the next 30 years, because it's hard for any of us to understand what the impact is on the road, what the impact is on during times of road construction. We have a bunch of township roads. There's not a lot of us that live out there. They're not minimal maintenance, but they're close to it, and they couldn't handle a season of having trucks pounding up and down it. So, I'd like the board, the commission to think about that, to consider this application, and maybe request more details so you can take a more thorough look at what the impact is. Thank you.
Is there any other opponents? Don't forget your Roger back there.
My name is Chad Berkey, and I live directly across the road from where Mr. Serzinger is applying for permits 2020 CU 009 and 010. I'm first going to give you a few reasons of why Brookings County has already basically stated and ruled that this is not an ideal spot for a gravel pit. All of this information I found on the Brookings County website, and all parts of Brookings County planning, zoning, and draining ordinances are already in place. According to Chapter 4.06 described in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, specifically Section 4.06.01, it states, "The Brookings County Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners recognize that the residents of Brookings County rely exclusively on groundwater for safe drinking water supply, and that certain land uses in Brookings County can contaminate groundwater, particularly in shallow and superficial aquifers. And the purpose of the Aquifer Protection Overlay District is to protect public health and safety by minimizing contamination of the shallow superficial aquifers of Brookings County. This proposed gravel pit lies in Zone B, which consists of shallow aquifers, one in which my own well pulls water from, which is all located in the Brookings County Groundwater Protection Zone. In Section 4.06.05, it states that this portion of the aquifer is being protected because it is a valuable natural resource for future development. It provides drinking water supply for individual households. Contamination is not justified. Even though this area is not a public water supply wellhead, but contaminants could eventually reach Zone A. Fuel containment is also going to be an issue at this site. Mr. Sturzinger states that his refueling area will have containment, but gives no other details or description. Is he aware that according to section 4.06.06 that in Zone A or B, storage of petroleum products in quantities exceeding 55 gallons at one locality in one tank or series of tanks must be in elevated tanks. Such tanks must have a secondary containment system. It also states that an acceptable contingency plan for all permitted facilities must be prepared and on file in the county zoning office for preventing hazardous materials from contaminating the shallow superficial aquifers should floods, fire, or other natural catastrophes or equipment failure occur. None of this was shown or described in his submitted plan. All of this information was just a reminder to you that this is all stated in ordinances previously written and passed by your board. Are you also aware that the U.S. Department of the Interior, along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, has a grassland easement on the very ground that Mr. Sturzinger is wanting to mine for gravel? The sum of $293,000, 150, was paid to Mr. Jensen on June 30th in 2009. It reads on the easement document that the Secretary of the Interior is to acquire lands and waters or interests therein for the development, advancement, management, conservation, and protection of fish and wildlife resources. The purpose of this easement is to protect the habitat quality of the lands described, and such land shall be maintained to provide cover, especially nesting cover, and for a varied array of aquatic, terrestrial, and avian wildlife, particularly waterfowl and threatened and endangered species. It also states that grantors will cooperate in maintenance of the wildlife management area by maintaining permanent vegetative cover consisting of grasses, forbs, and low-growing shrubs, and there shall be no alteration of grassland, wildlife habitat, or other natural features by digging, plowing, disking, or otherwise destroying the vegetative cover. As far as I'm concerned, and everyone else who I've talked to, including all the names on the petition, all agree that allowing this gravel pit would be the complete opposite of what the U.S. government had in mind for this when they paid for such an easement. I feel that granting these permits would void the efforts of the U.S. Department of the Interior and with U.S. Fish and Wildlife in trying to keep this land natural and virgin. The zoning commission is to decide what is in the best interest of the land. Well, in this case, I believe the check and the grassland easement attached to it that the U.S. government has already wrote speaks for itself. The South Dakota DNR and U.S. Fish and Wildlife are also aware and will be pursuing the fact for that the past 10 years or possibly more, gravel has been routinely taken out of the existing pit on the south side of the road. This has been happening without the correct permits or licenses. Brett Graves from the Mining and Minerals Division with South Dakota DENR informed me of this and also stated that the property has never had permits to mine. And now for just a few quick concerns that I have with the inadequate plan that Mr. Sturzinger has submitted. Some of these may be repetitive, so I'll kind of breeze through them.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, he states that the Hall Road will access 204th, which neither of these approaches are in safe locations. Will this ever change? He did comment on that a little bit. We as townships cannot afford to be repairing our gravel roads if he does decide on a different road. Surrounding neighbors will not appreciate the extra truck traffic and danger of the trucks. Is there a plan in place for the county if and when the county highway gets beat up with the extra trucks on it? And he states nothing about secondary fuel containment. The earth dam he builds, will it be adequate and hold in place when a flood occurs along the creek or a downpour sends water rushing down its bank, or will it end up washing down the waterway and end up in Lake Oakwood? He states at this time he plans to mine from 6 to 15 feet and be above the water table. If he is granted this permit, is he obligated to follow his intentions, or can he do whatever he wants if one is granted? In his reclamation plan, he's going to struggle to find enough topsoil to be able to correctly put it back to play the way it was. And on the south side of the road in the existing pit, there has not been any dirt saved up to this point. He has submitted a hand-drawn sketch of the areas he is proposing to mine. If they are to be beyond scale to his map, they are two somewhat small areas, no more than a couple acres in size. If this is the case, why is he expecting the mine to go on for 30 years? And why has he applied for so many acres which are listed in the legal description? If granted these permits, can he then mine anywhere he wants? Both of these areas are pastured. Do they plan on fencing off the mine areas, or is cattle wandering out on the pastures and onto the roads going to cause another safety hazard for the public? When you're reading through his plan, there's too many very gray areas and leaves too much open for me to think that this gravel pit is a good area or beneficial for our neighborhood and or for the county in general. Thank you for your time and consideration on the facts of this issue.
Is there any other
Said
opponents?
was meaningless. Hmm?
just a couple. Doug Layton, president of the Oakwood Lake Development Association. I guess when we come to look at development, this isn't what we're looking for. With the water, you know, and the 3 to 4 open mines that are already running up there, if you look at a overhead satellite view of that, they are open and working. We're just not, I built a new home up there 12 years ago. It's probably one of the quietest areas of this county, Brookings County. If there was a shortage of gravel in Brookings County, then maybe we would need another gravel pit. There's 3 or 4 gravel pits that show up on the DNR website north of Oakwood. Some have been reclaimed, I think 2 may be open. So I don't know where, we just, at the noise level too, and the tens of thousands of people that enjoy Oakwood Lake State Park in the proximity of this mine, and the noise of rock crushing and increased traffic, we're just, please consider a no vote on this zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Is there any other opponents?
Dennis DeBoer, a longtime resident of the area, been there over 70 years. And over the 70 years I can remember, and what's been told to me, that there's been a leafy spurge problem on the Jensen's pasture for years. And it goes back further than I can remember. And I talked to the weed board supervisor here just the other day, and she said there's still a real bad problem there. It still isn't under control. And from my knowledge, I used to haul material out of there years ago for different contractors. And my boss stopped and talked to me one day, and he said, we got notification that we got to pull out of the pit because it's been condemned because of the leafy spurge that we've been dragging all over the different townships and different areas. And we did notice when we was mining it that the banks were 15 to 20 feet high in places at the time we were mining. And the root system from the spurge was all the way down to the very bottom of it. Leaf spurge does grow from the seed, but it also is well known for the root regrowth that can be transported or regrows from the root when it's been sprayed. Also, if it does go through this plan, I would like to see a speed zone from the four corner to Jensen's four-way stop all the way to the state park line where their existing four-way 45-mile-an-hour zone is now. And it just doesn't seem like we need to have any more of this spurge problem. We got ours under control because we farm most of the land. Where we don't farm it, we still got a little bit of a problem yet trying to get it under control, especially in the trees and some of the waterways. And it's a real problem. And I guess I just don't like to see that stuff spread all over the country any more than it is already. Thank you. Oh, one other comment. Last Friday, contractors were in there hauling material out of that pit again. And you said there's no permits, right? And over the years, there's been contractors coming in there on and off all the time, hauling stuff out of there. And also, in the last few years, people have been hauling in old houses they tore down. They bring them in there and burn it. Everything is burnt. The whole complete house they tear down. And I don't think that's right either.
Is there any other opponents? Seeing none, is there any opponents for this? Or proponents, excuse me. Seeing none, We'll close the public hearing portion and move to the board for any additional comments or questions.
Richard, is Jimmy on the phone by chance?
No, he is not.
Okay, then I got a couple questions for Tom. Since there's currently no permits for mining, what are they doing out there?
I have not hauled anything out of there. And who's ever hauling out of there, I don't know. I don't know anything about people hauling out of there. I do know that Brookings County hauled in P-rock for storage to put on their roads. Beyond that, if they taken gravel out, it's beyond my knowledge. That's all I know about what's been in and out of that pit. And I agree, it's been used as a junkyard. Like I said, it needs to be cleaned up. And that's one task that I'd undertake and clean up.
What is your plan to clean it up? I mean, what's this gonna entail?
Right now, some of the people that he knows has been taking the junk out of the pit. Depends on how much you're gonna pull out of there, what's gonna be left, what I'm gonna have to do with it legally. Like I said, to the caretaker of the cemetery, absolutely, I agree with him. I respect what he says. As far as the integrity around the outside, we're not going to go any closer. If not, we'd support that with an inslope if we have overburden. Fuel containment, that's portable. You put the structure up underneath your fuel tanks. Stands up with a rubber barium around the inside. We've done a few jobs where groundwater leakage was an issue, and we had to put a system in place to protect any fuel loss. As far as the wildlife, the DNR, Brian Schultz is the gentleman's name from the DNR in Madison. I've been working with him. And he's waiting to see how long the permit's going to be tonight, and in order to give Jim his permit to us. So we've been in contact with him as far as what legally we can do with the DNR, with the easement they have in place. And right now, what Brian and I have talked about, he's good with what I'm going to do. Up to how many acres we're going to have open. 8 to 10 acres. I says, while you're working the pit, it might be over, but before we leave, it'll be leveled off and back into 8 to 10 acres. And Brian Schultz was all right with that.
Are there any township roads that are going to be used during any of
This material is basically going to be used for the county and township roads. Some, I'm sure, is for private, but mainly county and municipalities.
But access to the pit?
It'll be on the Tar County roads, which I've talked to Brian, and he said no road agreement is necessary as long as they're legal loads.
If you intended to use township roads, I think a road agreement would be in order with any township roads.
And we would. But right now, if any townships were done, it would be for the road maintenance of the township itself.
I understand, but if you're using it for a haul road of any sort whatsoever, I think we would require you get a road agreement with the
Understand.
townships.
At this time, we don't have any plan beyond the Tar County roads.
At this point, that would prevent you from using them without a road agreement. So that you understand that.
Unless I was hauling to a private entity going down the township
I'm
road.
talking about just road haul out of the area.
Okay,
No,
I agree.
Is there a state mining permit in place on this?
Like last time, I can get the first permit in place, because that's another lengthy process. It takes 6 weeks to get, because they post it through the paper. Each acre that's opened, it requires a $500 bond to the state. So that, for that reason, I wait to get the permit for the state until after I get the permit with the county. Because it's another process you need to go through.
It was mentioned that you hadn't described your fuel containment areas, but there are restrictions or design criteria for the mining permit as far as fuel restriction requirements. Is that correct?
I can't quite hear you.
I am assuming that there are containment facility requirements in the mining permit. Even though you said you'll have a fuel containment, but you haven't described, there was a question about, you haven't described the fuel containment. I assume, Richard, there are fuel containment requirements.
That would be up to the state DNR and their licensing requirements
It's
over
going to come
that.
through. My point is there will be requirements, whether you've stated them in your permit or not, for fuel containment that you're going to have to adhere to, and you understand that.
Agree.
Okay. This grassland easement, how much of this particular property is that involved? Is it, as I'm trying to read it quickly here, so I wasn't aware of this one, that it does involve part of section 13 and section 12, and there's also some wetland easements in there also, for some of the potholes that are around there.
The wetlands we will stay away from, as far as I know. Brian and I were going to do a walk around, then a COVID-19 ordeal hit, and but as far as where the gravel pit piles are going to be placed, how they're sloped, and that's one of the largest deals that he wanted to make sure is that the water would mitigate back down to the stream, because they need the water life low-lying areas. So as far as where I can place the gravel, that's going to be up to Brian
From DNR.
from the DNR,
Okay.
Brian Schultz.
I mean, I want the public to understand that there are restrictions that, of things that
Correct.
you're going to be subject to beyond what we require.
Yes.
Okay.
And the grassland easement does not infringe upon the mineral rights of the property, which is technically what this would be.
And again, I'm not an attorney. I can't read that as I'm reading the grassland easement. If it excludes it or not, I'm going to make an assumption it probably does, or we wouldn't be here with this request.
Mr. Chair, if I may add a couple things here. Mr. Muller from First District is on the line if you have any questions for Luke. And also, this is a mineral right, and it does from the wildlife easement. I've spoken with Mr. Schultz with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office, the Department of Interior, not with the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. This is a federal agency that he's been talking to in Madison. So and I have been in contact with him too, and he had told me the same thing that Mr. Sturzinger has said this evening.
So essentially, we have all kinds of safeguards that are in place that we're adhering to
Yes.
with the application.
Plus what I have laid out in the findings of facts. But yes, there's a certain percentage. Mine size is limited to 10 to 12 acres at a time to be open. If he wants to mine more of that, if he wants to mine 3 more acres, he has to reclaim 3 acres.
And that's stated in all the paperwork everywhere.
Yes. I do have a statement here from the Highway Department in regards to the road agreements and whatnot, or as long as he adheres to the legal limits of that. Memorandum from Brian Gusta, the Highway Superintendent. I'll just read that quick. Based upon the recent applications for new and existing gravel mining sites located within Brookings County, it is the Brookings County Highway Department's perspective that the increased semi-truck traffic will not have an impact on the Brookings County primary infrastructure based upon trucks entering and exiting the gravel mining site, or of legal loads for Brookings County highway and bridges, loads entering or exiting the gravel mining site that are not considered legal in width or height. It is expected the operator to obtain a single trip permit over with permit application for ordinance 10-02 or an overweight permit application ordinance 0701. Furthermore, it is understood that the party applying for a new or existing gravel mining sites located within Brookings County adhere to the spring and load restrictions enacted by the Brookings County Commission annually. Signed, Brian Gusted, Brookings County Highway Superintendent.
You also stated that you had a comment from the Water District.
Yes. Jay Gilbertson reviewed the materials, and his concern was that the fuel storage and containment and refueling areas be off the active mining site away and have containment on there with them, and that was his recommendation. That was his only concern. Everything else he said was adequate with what we had laid out.
Do we have that in our findings of fact?
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot of the stuff that's being discussed is in the findings once we get there, so you could add, subtract, delete.
That's kind of the difficult part of this process is the findings of facts. They seem to come before we ask our questions sometimes, so a little bit frustrating. To address the Oakwood Zion Cemetery's request from Jeff Jacobson on I kind of looked at it a little bit. Dust control measures are always an issue. I live on a little bit of a gravel road too, and it takes some chloride to keep the dust down. What are your plans for dust control out there?
On the access road going in and out, except for right in the bottom of the pit, going up by the cemetery, they can be addressed with chloride up to the tar road. Beyond that, there's not going to be a dust issue.
I don't know how active a cemetery this is. Can you advise me, or do we have committals there once a year, once every 10 years? Haven't had one for 10 years. Give me an idea. Between 1 and 5 years. Okay. How many grave sites do we have in this cemetery? I don't know how large. I've driven by it, but I can't tell you how big it is.
Just have you step up to the mic and then address.
Be great.
So we have, I would say, on average, between 1 and 5. Between every 1 and 5 years, there's a burial there. I'm ashamed I don't know the number, but I would say there's 30 to 40 grave sites up there.
Less than 50.
It's not a particularly active
cemetery. They're probably not going to operate on weekends. That's probably not an issue. And I would think that Mr. Sersinger would, if you had a burial during the week, would certainly honor that, and most of us would. Cease operations while you had a burial. Your request for backsloping of the and the engineering. I don't know that I would require that, a professional engineering study, because it could get pretty expensive for that. I think some common sense could be applied to that backing. If you have some suggestions on how many feet that should extend, is that what you're looking for, Mr. Sersinger, is how far away from the cemetery you'll slope?
Mr. Sersinger, we have you come back up to the
Yeah,
mic, please.
I apologize. We need multiple mics.
We're not going any closer to the cemetery right now. I never measured it, but would you assume that it's away with the slope? I never measured it.
I would say they're probably pretty close. I guess
So-
the only concerns I have is that there continues to be barn swallows in there, so it continues to get closer right now because it is a steep bank that is becoming more and more undercut. So I think we really don't know. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know what the soil conditions are there. I don't know what a reasonable amount is, which is why I thought it would be appropriate that someone do some type of a study. You know, plus, there is ongoing mining there. So what has been taken out up until last week, the stuff was going west down the highway and then up over by Arlington's.
But what you're saying is the mining's starting to encroach, and he's saying that they're not gonna get any closer than where it is now is.
And all I'm saying is, I don't know if where they're at now is too close already or not.
Well, it is what it is, but your plan is to not go any further where he's saying it's undercut?
My conversation with Jim, I says, what I'd like to do, if I had any overburden left, is to address that slope. Because you're right, it is sloughing. It's nothing that we've done, but I would like to somewhat fix the contusion. If I get in there, if I have overburden, I'd like to place the extra clay back in the bank and create a slope. Reasonable? A 3-to-1 would be the least. 4-to-1 would be nice. 4-to-1 you can get on and spray. 3-to-1 you can get on and spray, but it's pretty steep.
Thank you. I think you've answered my question, and hopefully you can work that out between you. My other question at this point is there were some articles sent, there were some letters sent to us that we reviewed. One of them concerned the runoff situation into the creek. It doesn't involve cemetery, thank you. But the runoff into the creek, and you talked about an earthen structure or some sort of structure to keep the runoff off. Can you describe to me what you plan to have for that structure?
The overburden, otherwise the black dirt on the top of the material, would be used as an earthen berm between the mine site and the creek. In addition, Richard told me that I will need a silt fence between the creek and our mine site as well. Is that correct, Richard?
Between the creek and the berm until the berm gets seeded down and established.
So it'll have a how can I say, a double layer of protection between the creek and the mine site.
Okay.
So it'll have a silt fence and then an earthen dam.
Any size requirements for that earthen dam? Is it 5 feet high, 2 feet high, 10 feet high, 50 feet wide, 20 feet wide, 10 feet wide? I have no idea.
Silt fence usually is about 1.5 feet high.
Yeah, I know the silt fence. I'm talking about the
But
earthen berm.
earthen berm, it'd be higher than that. 3 feet, 4 feet.
Okay.
And probably 10 to 15 feet wide by the time you put slopes on it so you can contain the weeds.
So a 3 or 4-to-1 slope?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the types of details that aren't in your application that I like to be made public, so it can hold you to it.
My shortcoming, sorry.
And again, I apologize, DNR will have requirements for the mining permit. You're gonna have to adhere to also to have the operation. So there are some safeguards there for the property and the aquifer.
One thing that the neighbors mentioned is the extent of mining. You know, how far are you planning on going? You know, as far as setbacks and all that.
I'll take it parsec by parsec. On the south side, the existing mine site, the materials are basically 200-300 feet beyond that in the realm. And then that's just on the south side. Then that would be cleaned up. A couple of years, maybe 3. On the north side, it's going to be, I can read, where's the cemetery on there?
Right there. Or do you want the cemetery? This is the northeast quarter right here where the cemetery
yes.
is.
Gotta hold it, huh?
Just make it larger, Richard. There we can see it.
So that's the cemetery, right?
Nope, cemetery is right here.
Oh, this is the south side.
Yep, this is the south side.
So as far as the mining right now, around the outside, it's already been, this road comes down into the pit. Around the outside of the berm, this is the old mine site, I believe. So around the outsides, is where the mineral is existing, right in this area. So in that area there is where we'll be doing it. The earthen berm and silt fence will extend the length of excavation up here. That's on the south side. Then it'll be recaptured. On the north side,
I'll get the other map right just a second
Oh.
here. That's the northwest. Anything, as long as we're on the south side, if I may take a cent here, anything over in this area, in the northwest quarter?
this is the
Like-
south side.
Yep. This is where Mr. Jensen lives, right here.
The only thing that might happen is if we need some clay reserve, if it gets a little thin, back over here, let's see. This is cemetery, right?
That's Jimmy's house. Cemetery's right here.
Oh, cemetery. So if it needs a little bit more clay, there's clay back in this hill that we'll have to excavate and then bring forward to mix with the material. That's the only other thing that we'd need on this side. If that happens or not, there's enough PI in the material that it may or may not happen until after I get processing. Won't know till I can start checking the minerals.
So to clarify on the question, you're not planning on doing anything in the highlighted square there?
In the northwest quarter?
Oh, hell.
You have another laser, Raylan?
No, just in that existing spot where I just showed you.
Okay.
That's the intent at this point.
So if we limited or took off the northwest quarter of section 13 for mining over here.
Oh, I broke it. Oh. Shit, I can't do anything here, right? No, it'll be just around on the south side, right around the pit, and possibly further to the south to get clay.
Okay, so we could, in our findings, we could take this northwest quarter off of there then, or would you?
Yes. We,
Okay.
honestly, we didn't check it. It still froze outside, so we couldn't. We ripped up the backhoe, the excavator bucket once. Ran out of time because the postings came upon us.
Okay. Kind of got sidetracked here a little bit, but just something for the board to consider as we're going along here. Now I'll get across to section 12 on the north side. Okay, here's the 40 right across from the cemetery right here.
So that's a cemetery right here.
Cemetery's right here.
So the material, there's a small jaunt right here alongside the highway. Then it's low-lying ground. Then it comes back into the hill back over here. That's where the old existing mine site once was. So the earthen berm would have to be in place in here with a silt fence. And the only reason why we, on the other side of the creek, have no intention in mining on that side, except if we run out of clay. Up in the corner up on the other side of the creek side,
I'll bring that map up here and we can. There's the adjoining property right there.
if we could not find available clay to mix with the material. As far as rocks, I mean, it has a good amount of everything I need, except for clay that I don't know. And if I can't find it, which I should be able to find it on this side of the creek, I'd have to go over to this side and pull some clay base off a borrow site and bring it across, which I'm not going to do unless I absolutely have to. As far as going on this side, mining, I don't foresee it. There's too many wetlands that I got to address. On this side, there's only a couple that I can work around. But on this side, there must be 14 of them. I never counted, but there's a few wetlands that I just don't want to address.
So if you're talking about borrowing clay from the west side, are you crossing the creek or going around on the road?
You have to come around on the road. But like I said, I may not have to. That would be the only thing that I might have to do, possibly. I don't foresee it because I feel everything is on this side of the creek. Did I answer your question?
On your 10 acres open, so if you have 10 acres of gravel and you have to go into the clay, do you have to close part? I mean, if you'd open up 3 acres in that corner for the clay, would you have to close 3 acres of the gravel to mine 3 acres of the clay?
If that's what I'd have to do, so be it. I guess I got to stay in compliance. When I had the initial conversation with Brian Schultz from the DNR, I says at times I may go over, and he says I don't have an issue with that as long as you bring it back down before you leave. He says if you go out of bounds a little bit, it's not that huge of an issue as long as when you leave it's under 8 acres. That's open. And I says I can guarantee do it right, so it's put back in place. And
You have to post bonds with the state, don't you?
you do. And that's how come I do this portion first.
Mhm.
Then after that, then I go after the mine permit.
Yeah.
Because minimum, I think, you're gonna open up 8 acres, that's $500 an acre, is $4,000 you pass on to the state. And that's what I would do. Probably go with 8, 9 acres, $4,500 bond, well, CD, whichever you'd like to go to, then pass it on to the state for the reclamation bond. That's how come I do this process first. Then I go after the bonding and the paperwork that I have to do with the state of South Dakota.
Just so everybody knows that there are bonds posted and it has to be reclaimed before you're out of there.
Correct.
Is there any way that we could trim this parcel to a smaller size, like you mentioned? Along the road, there's them 14 wetlands. It is included in the plan here, even though it's not part of the plan. Is there a way that we could exclude it from this process?
If the board wishes, what I stated is what my intent is. On the east side of the creek, like I said, there's a portion up in front that will be excavated at some point in time, but right now I'm using that as a barrier for an eyesore. Since the public doesn't want a pit, just thought I'd leave that portion of material there, the rise, and then start back in this portion back here. But I might have to, when we do this, the road is going to have to be up on the high part of the road in order to gain vision on both sides, so it's a safe passage back and forth. So I'm going to have to push this down and create a road base to come back and mine back here. But that'll be in 3 years. Because the west or the south half, or the south side of the section will be done and cleaned up and seeded before I come over to the north side. So only one pit will be open at a time. And that's, Jimmy Jensen wanted that done that direction, so that around the cemetery it is done, it's cleaned up, seeded, and then go to the north side.
Would you be opposed to splitting the north side off to a later date, like in 3 years when you're done with the south side?
I'd have to, I guess. Like to do it all in one permit if I can, but that's up to the board. I leave that up to you.
How does the board feel about that?
What's your time frame on seeding back the south side, finishing the mining operation, seeding it back?
If it's complete, after we get done pushing the material back over the top, it'd be pretty much right away on that portion that has been recaptured, recovered. Because the state checks you every year as far as how many acres you have open. More acres you have open, more bond you need to pay.
So if you're telling me you'd be done on the south side in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
3 years.
3 years on the south side
Two,
around the
2 years,
cemetery.
hopefully, probably be 3.
So if we did an action as Mr. Ford requested, you'd be back in 3 years, closing that one and moving to the other side.
Correct.
Be
Or
cleaned up,
maybe in 2 years
reclaimed.
if we get done.
Okay, so reclaimed in 2 to 3 years. You'd stated in the permit a 30-year operation. That was basically intended for the north side?
It's a tentative,
For
excuse
the
me,
north
my hearing is
side?
terrible.
I could help you with that. You're talking about the north side that would be a 30-year plan.
I'm not positive how much material's in the back of the hills. We did do
Well,
it.
but maximum of 30 years on the north side, you're talking 2 to 3 on the south side by the cemetery.
Correct.
Okay. I don't think we can limit a permit to 3 years.
No.
So that, to me, is not possible.
I think we could limit it to 10. That with the limited amount of resource there, would 10 be sufficient
On the south side, or are
on
you
the,
talking
on the
about?
south side?
Well, like I said, I plan on being done in 2 to 3 years
Yep.
on the
But
south side.
there are natural occurrences that can delay things, and I just don't want to short you on anything.
Yeah.
We've done it in 5 years.
Have we?
Limit of 5 years before.
Limit 5 years before.
You'd be back in 3 years to ask for the north side if we only granted the south side for 10, or for 5 years. Is that correct?
That's how come I was asking for both sides, so I didn't have to, if I ran short on the 3rd year, then I'd be back in 2 years asking, but like I said, that's up to the board.
The only reason I ask if you're willing to it is it's a chance to prove yourself to the community. I feel it's a chance to prove yourself to the community by not show them what you can do on a smaller scale. If everything works out right, if we would just go the south side, everybody's happy with that. When you're ready to close that and move to the north side, I don't see it being much of a process coming in here as long as everything's done the way that you say you're going to do it, the right way, put it back, take care of things, clean things up. I don't feel that if you showed the community around there that you were doing it the right way, that there would be any opposition to you coming back in 3 years, 4 years to apply for the north side of the road, that anybody'd have anything to say about it.
See your point. Okay.
I'm going to throw just a little bit of a pushback here. I agree that maybe we could, but I would like to grant you the other side tonight simply for one reason. You're going to invest a lot of money in this operation and a crushing plant and all those types of things. To have it limited to moving to the north side later and getting turned down, it's quite an investment for 2 years worth of gravel.
You're correct.
So I don't want to stick you with that type of a elephant at this point. So I would support the 5 year on the south side and whatever's appropriate on the north side, so that you have some sort of a sense that this is a wise investment and not a foolish one.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, he stated earlier that he could not have both mines open at the same time, so the south mine would be done and complete before he would start on the other one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
2 mines would not be opened up at the same time. And we could stipulate that in the findings of facts.
We could just do it that way and not limit it to 5 years then.
Or we can limit, yeah, whatever the board wants. We can put on there a 5-year limit on this, on the northeast quarter of section 13. And the rest on the balance of that for whatever, but yes, we could state that into the other part of the findings.
Would it be appropriate on the north side of the road to just limit it to those 280s? That, because you said you didn't want to get into that west 80 where all of the wetlands were.
The only thing on the west 80.
This is a 40.
Yep.
That's a 100.
Yep.
And that's,
So what I'm saying is that 40, the 40 to the north of it,
okay, where the gravel starts right here on the north line fence.
Yep.
And
you
where?
said the 40 to the north of that?
So coming all the way up into here?
No, not that top, from there down.
From there
Yep.
to there. You mean straight across, per se?
Yeah, and then the 80 to the west of that, if you have to get into that to get clay. So it's the quarter in the middle of the section is what it amounts to on the north side of the road.
I don't know how much of this is low ground. It rises back up over here.
So you're thinking you'd end up on
Or
that-
I could go across the road if need be. Because there is clay in the back end, which I'm already saying that we might use for a borrow site.
Mhm.
Then I could eliminate this side completely, still utilizing the south side. I could do it that way.
if getting into that doesn't constitute having both sides of the road open at the same time. They were talking about having the south side completely done and all reclaimed before you get into the north side. Does a borrow pit for clay? That's still a mine, I assume.
Correct. And you're right. If I go back to the south side, that has to be bonded if it's opened up for mining purposes. Correct. So that will not be closed down at that point. And I'm not for sure that we're not going to be able to find clay on this side.
What about that 40 to the north of the 40 that we were talking about?
Hasn't been extensively tested yet.
But there is a chance, is there hills there where there would be clay in there?
Yes, and there probably is.
And if there
Whatever.
is, that would be closer and that would be farther off the road and you wouldn't have to be hauling on the road.
And I
That
absolutely,
would just be a better deal all the way around for everybody.
correct. And I absolutely would do that.
That's why I was giving you that 40 to the north.
Sure. Actually, I think I could have from the creek line on the east side, just north, using the creek line as the dividing point.
It'd be easiest, just to say the two parcels there instead of trying to, because those are a camaraderie of just legal descriptions on there
Yep.
already.
Yep.
We can limit to or put those two parcels in the findings of facts for the north side, if you'd like, if that's what the board would like.
Seems reasonable to me.
Is there any other additional comments or questions from the board?
I would like to suggest that at this point, we just approve the south side. Make it come back for an approval on the north side. If it happens in 3 years, it happens in 3 years. If it happens in 10, it happens in 10. There's just too many questions on the north side of it. I know you have to operate one and close it before you can do the other one anyway. So I'd suggest that we just do the south side, even though it's a financial concern. It seems that you can get the clay on the south side, you can get the things you need on the south side, so come back on the north side when you need it, is my suggestion.
On that suggestion, do you want him to be completely closed before he comes back, or once he begins his closure plan?
Obviously, yeah, when he's ready
I mean,
to
we want
make that application for the north side.
It could be contingent at that time that the other pit would be completely reclaimed and done also before.
Contingent on its completion.
Yes.
And I don't know anything about reclaiming and completing this. When you decide to close it, how long will it take you to do that reclamation and seed it? 1 year, 6 months, 3 months?
Why the equipment's in place. So while the machinery's there, it'll be a process while we're mining. Why?
So it
Actually,
won't be a real hardship to close it and then apply for the next
I
one?
don't plan on doing it that way.
Okay.
So it's closed up as we continue process. With my verbal agreement with Brian Schultz from the DNR, that's what I intended to do, is clean it up as I go so I can keep within the 8 acres of land that he wanted, knowing that it'll go over during mining, but before I leave, it'll be within compliance.
Be my suggestion that we do that.
Is there any other discussion or comments or questions from the board?
I'd still like to see a 5-year, even though it's the south side and he's pretty sure he'll have it done in 3 years. I'd still like to see a 5-year limit on it.
Just to guarantee it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Any other additional comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll have to ask Richard to read the findings of the facts.
All right, and we'll read the findings of the facts. Brookings County Zoning Conditional Use Permit 2020 CU 009, application for the conditional use permit having been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission. Acting as a board of adjustment, a copy of the application being attached hereto, such application being made by Tom Sturzinger regarding the following real property. The north 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52 West, and the northeast 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52, to include cemetery, and the southwest 1/4 of the southeast 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111, Range 52 West, and the east half of the southwest quarter, and the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter, and the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 12, Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52 West, and the west half of the southwest quarter and the south half of the northwest quarter of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52 West, Windsor Township. After due notice of public hearing having been held on the application on this 5th day of May, 2020. Number one, the Brookings County Zoning Commission hereby finding that it is empowered to grant such a conditional use of the following. Article 11, Section 1101A Agricultural District, conditional use number 4. And further finding that granting the conditional use permit will not adversely affect the public interest. Number 2, none stated. Number 3, A, entrance and exits to property, proposed structure thereon with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety, convenience, traffic flow control, access in case of fire or catastrophe. Primary entrance and exits to the gravel pit in Section 12 and 13 will be off Brookings County Blacktop Road number 6, 204th Street. No secondary entrance or exit onto township gravel roads. We can take this Section 12 off of there, right? Just go with Section 13, the
Yeah.
south half.
Yeah, and I think when you go back up to legal, you can take everything off but Section 13.
Well, that's part of the application. That will change that as we go. That's how the application read, so that has to stay up there.
Yep.
B, off-street parking and loading areas where required with particular attention to items in A above and economic noise, glare, and other effects, special exception on the adjoining properties and properties generally in the district requirements. No on-street parking, no parking of equipment or storage of fuel or oil in the mining area, separate parking lot area and storage area for fuel, oil, and equipment and with containment to be at least 300 feet away from the mined and actively mined areas. C, utilities and refuse locations to availability and compatibility. If you have any junk or garbage out there, you'd have to have a dumpster out there and have it collected by a dumpster service. D, screening and buffering with reference to type, dimension, character, and requirements. Earthen berm along the waterway in the mining area until reclamation is complete. Silt fence between the earthen berm and the waterway until the berm is seeded down and grass is established. Excuse me. E, signs of any proposed exterior with reference to glare, traffic, safety, economic effect, compatibility, and harmony with properties in the district. 32 square foot of sign allowed. Folding trucks entering signs and posts to be placed east and west of the entrance at the appropriate distance on Brookings County Blacktop Road number 6, 204th Street, with assistance of the Brookings County Highway Department for proper placement. Trucks entering signs to be opened and displayed when trucks are hauling from gravel pit. When mining is complete and the property reclaimed, trucks entering signs and posts to be removed. Required yards and other open spaces. Spraying of all noxious and other weeds before they go to seed. Monitor weed growth and weed control by spraying, mowing, or tilling by the permit holder or designated professional sprayer service. Permit holder to spray 50 foot beyond the perimeter of the actively mining area, earthen berms, service road, and equipment storage and refueling area. Weed controlled pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 3822. G, general compatibility with adjacent properties and other property in the district. Comprehensive plan met for the agricultural district. H, roads providing access to property inadequate to meet the transportation demands of the proposed conditional use. The Board of Adjustment may require applicant to enter a written contract with any affected township or other government unit regarding the upgrading and continued maintenance of any roads used for the conditional use request prior to the issuance of a conditional use. None stated. See 3A above, which is the county road access. I, any required notifications to law enforcement and fire department? None stated. J, any safety inspections? None stated. Number 4, the Brookings County Zoning Commission further determines conditions as conditional use permit upon the following additional special conditions or safeguards. A, setbacks. 1, mining to be 50 feet setback from property lines. 2, 100-foot setback from any public right-of-way. 3, 200 feet setback from any residence. 4, 50-foot setback from all sides of cemetery fence. B, dust control such as magnesium chloride or like products in the driveway, entrance, exit, loading areas, in front of residents, or farms along the haul route, as needed. Hours of operations from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday.
Richard, just a quick clarification here on the 50-foot setback from all sides of the cemetery. That's just for the mining, that doesn't include the driveway? 'Cause that looked a lot closer than 50 feet.
Well, the driveway is existing and that's where the gates are.
Yeah.
So there would be no mining right there.
Well, no,
But the entrance and exit could be there.
Okay.
Because that's where it is already existing.
Yeah, that was a clarification.
Yep. Okay.
Ask a question. When you mean 100 feet, move the entrance 100 feet over from the county road?
No. Mining.
Oh,
No, the existing service road would be there, just that you couldn't mine within 100 feet of the property of the fence line around the cemetery.
just worried when you said that, I thought it wasn't be on the top of the hill. That's where I needed it.
Yeah, no, the entrance will stay the same. It's just that the setback to the mining to the property line would be, to the cemetery fence would be 100 feet. All right, D, actively mined area to be no more than 10 acres at size take either one since we're going with proposed mine site in section (13) with mined area reclaimed to South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources standards. Mining on property with a U.S. Fish and Wildlife easement and waterfowl habitat protection easement, reclamation to meet U.S. Fish and Wildlife standards. Reclamation plan, topsoil placed on mine site and seeded down to grass to be on file with the Brookings County Development Office. Entrance gates at the site to be padlocked. G, South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources mining permit to be required to be on file with the Brookings County Development Office. Conditional use is good for 5 years, is that correct? Conditional use good for 5 years, expires in May 2025. We want the northwest or the northeast quarter and leave out the northwest quarter. Is that correct on section 13? Okay, Brookings County Zoning Commission by at least 2/3 vote of its full membership hereby grants the above petitioner a conditional use permit for the above described real property as follows. Conditional use number 4, mine gravel. Conditional use permit is specifically conditioned upon initial and continued compliance with all the requirements in 3 and 4 above, and upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. Brookings County, if approved, the Brookings County zoning director is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent with the requirements of this conditional use permit. If this conditional use permit is not used within 3 years of the date granted, it shall be invalid, dated this 5th day of May.
And this is contingent with requiring a state permit that everything
Yep,
is.
that's right up here in letter G.
Where it says conditional use number 4, mine gravel, does that restrict him from mining clay or anything else? Just gravel?
We can add that in there. It's mining gravel and mineral exploration. It's all into one.
That is, okay.
I can add that in there.
And I think, again, for your benefit, Mr. Sersinger, you're on the north side, 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, you can come back with a plan. I mean, Mr. Kleinjohn asked a lot of questions about going to the north and obviously some wetland issues, so we don't really have a plan up there. We don't really know where it's going to go. This will give you an opportunity to check that area and come back with a better plan where you know where the clay is and where you need to go. And the confidence level to grant that permit will be certainly higher at that point in time. And it would give you time to make that application.
All right, Richard.
Would you call the roll?
Bartley.
Aye.
Dietrich.
Aye.
Vanderwall.
Aye.
Kleinjohn.
Aye.
Jensen.
Yes.
Erickson, you'll have to speak louder or come up to the microphone, please. Okay, thank you. Nelson,
Aye.
McHugh,
Aye.
and Ford.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next agenda item, 2020 CU 010. Tom Sturzinger has made an application 2020 CU 010 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for conditional use, Article 11, Section 11.01A, Agricultural District Conditional Use Permit Number 5A, Rock Crushers. The property is described as the northwest 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and the northeast 1/4 of Section 13, Township 111 North, Range 52W, to include cemetery, and southwest 1/4, southeast 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and east 1/2, southwest 1/4, northwest 1/4, southeast 1/4, southwest 1/4, northeast 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52W, and west 1/2, southwest 1/4, south half, northwest 1/4 of Section 12, Township 111 North, Range 52W, Windsor Township. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Diedrich,
Second.
second by Vanderwall. Richard, would you read the staff report?
Yes, 2020 CU 010, Tom Sturzinger has applied for conditional use number 5A, Rock Crusher, to private real property. He is from Taunton, Minnesota, and will be the crushing operator. His site plan, business plan, and hours of operation are included in this report. The proposed rock crusher will be at one site now. Will be in the northeast 1/4 of Section 13 on the south side of Brookings County Highway number 6, 204th Street. And Site 2 doesn't pertain to this anymore because it was not approved for that site. The entrance and exits to the crushing site will be off Brookings County Blacktop Highway number 6, and the hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. And East Dakota Water District has reviewed the plans and the documents for this applicant. The zoning office has reviewed the plans and made a trip to the site of the proposed location. Proposed notices were published in the Brookings Register on April 21st and 28th, 2020, and in the Volusia Tribune on April 23rd and 30th, 2020. And adjoining landowners letters were sent to the adjoining landowners and the Brookings County Highway Department, Superintendent, and the Windsor Township Chairman and Clerk. Received several comments that were on file with the zoning office. Again, just the site map again, showing the proposed site over in this area, south of the cemetery. Proposed beacon maps again, as we just seen previously, his business plan here as with the previous application, and this is the beacon maps of the same area that we just seen. Just going over pictures again quick, this is the entrance looking towards the west from the driveway. This is looking towards the east. This is the field entrance going into the gate there by the cemetery. This is the proposed crushing area. We'll be back in this area. And these are the proposed sites on the north side of this road. I won't go over those. And that's all that I have.
Would the applicant come forward?
You know, come forward, Tom.
Come forward, Tom. Any additions or corrections to Richard's report?
From what I previously stated, no.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Then we'll go to the public hearing portion. Anybody opposed to this?
Just got a couple of quick things. I didn't get really a chance to, I don't know how this whole process works, to do a rebuttal after you guys talked. couple things to take into consideration, and I don't know if you guys have discussed with Brian Schultz. Obviously, the U.S. government has a huge loophole in the easements they write, as far as they set it aside to protect the land, and then yet you can go in and mine it for 30 years or whatever his plan is. Is clay considered a mineral? Can he go and steal clay from a hilltop and reclaim that? And that would be a question probably for the Brian Schultz in that easement. You know, yes, gravel is a mineral, but can he go steal clay from a hilltop anywhere he feels like?
This is only pertaining to crushing, Chad, so.
Okay, well, it's just, as far as crushing, live right next to it when they were out there this winter, digging for gravel. I don't really feel like having a rock crusher be a alarm clock for me at 6 a.m. in the morning or at 7 p.m. at night when we're sitting out on our deck trying to enjoy a supper. I would appreciate a little consideration on the time frame for rock crushing. I don't know how loud that equipment is, but I can just imagine. 8 to 5 doesn't sound unreasonable for crushing rock. So as far as that goes on the rock crushing, I guess just the noise and the time frame on that would be nice. I guess if you could consider that would be good. Thank you.
Is there any other opponents?
Dennis DeBoer again. I just had one question. I was just curious on the board itself, how many have been on site to inspect it before this application? If you guys have been out there and walked it and looked at it or anything?
I wasn't able to walk it, the gate was closed, but I drove by.
I was just curious if anybody's really looked at it.
Is there any other opponents? Seeing none, is there any proponents? Seeing none, I'll now close the public portion of the hearing. To the board for any additional comments or questions.
Well, I would suggest we limit it to the northeast quarter of 13.
I guess I have a question for Mr. Scherzinger. I guess I'm with Chad. I don't understand how the crushing operation works. Would it be a major constraint to limit you from 8 to 5?
Some capacity. Usually the crew gets there at 6. Time we get up and rolling at 7. Then come 6:30, we start shutting down and locking up and leaving. Shorten the hours. I guess time is money, so you have the crew that depends on so many hours a day so they can feed their families and they get used to working those hours and depending on that type of pay. I can understand his concern. I guess I don't know how far back his farm is. Quarter mile? Probably hear it, but as far as noise level,
I think the payloaders probably make more noise than the crusher, don't they?
about the same. Depending on how
And the only
which
time,
direction the wind is heading. The wind has a huge deal with noise.
and I think the public needs to understand that this is only running when you're stockpiling.
The time that I'll be there, it'll probably be 3 weeks. So it's not all summer long.
Yeah, you'll be stockpiling for 3 weeks, and then
Put up
after that,
3
the crusher
weeks,
will-
and then I'll be leaving.
Yep.
Going to the next project.
All that'll be there after that 3 weeks is just a payloader to load.
Payloader and stockpile.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is there any other additional comments or questions from the board?
So it's fair to say the crusher probably wouldn't be up and going until 7 in the morning then, basically running.
Before we get up and running, usually 7 o'clock time, we do our pre-checks and get the machine idling and up and running, usually
And
7.
You'll probably be shutting the crusher down at probably 6 because it takes you so long to get it.
Yeah, 6, somewhere around 6:30, somewhere in there. Driving back, yeah, most likely it'll be closer to 6 because then we'll a little further away from home, take a little time, more time to drive back. I like to get home at a certain time to see our family.
So now, what time of the year would this be happening? I mean, I know 3 weeks, is it spring or summer? What's your goal there?
The process with the MSHA, pier is going to take 6 weeks to 8 weeks. So that'll take us up to July. Probably won't be there until August, September this year.
About ongoing in the subsequent years? I mean, are you aiming to be out there
Probably
early
not in the
spring when
spring,
school
it's
is still going
low-lying
on?
ground. So probably more so it'd be in the summer to fall.
I imagine it a lot depends on when your stockpile runs out.
Yeah, it does. Or the stockpile runs out, or entities need it really bad, then you have to make adjustments in your schedule, push your equipment around.
If you have wet years like the last 2 years, the gravel just disappears fast and you end up in there a lot quicker.
Very true.
I'd like to add in there, possibly in the facts of the findings, and maybe we should have done this on the last one as well, that the considerations be extended to the cemetery, that it be shut down if there's any services being held.
Agree.
Okay. I don't know if we gotta put that in the facts of the findings, or if that's more or less is as good of a gentleman agreement.
However you'd like to state it, but no, I respect that.
Are there any other additional comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, Richard, would you read the findings of the facts?
Application for conditional use 2020 CU 010. Application Commission acting as the Brookings County Board of Adjustment. A copy of the application being attached here too by Tom Sturzinger regarding the following real property, the Northwest 1/4, as stated. I read that earlier, so I will not repeat that. After due notice, a public hearing have been held in the application this 5th of May, 2020. Number 1, under Article 11, Section 11.01A Agricultural District, conditional use number 5A. Number 2, none stated. Number 3, primary entrance and exit to the crushing area. Will be off Brookings County Highway Blacktop number 6. Otherwise known as 204th Street. No secondary entrance or exit onto gravel roads. B, no on-street parking, no parking of equipment or storage or fuel in the crushing area, separate parking area for equipment and storage with containment for fuel and oil, both would be 300 feet away from the crushing site. C, dumpster service required for garbage disposal. D, earthen berm along waterway in the crushing area until reclamation is complete. Silt fence between earthen berm and waterway until berm is seeded down and the grass is established. E, 32 square foot sign allowed. F, spraying of all noxious and other weeds before they go to seed, monitor seed growth and weed control by spraying, mowing, or tilling by permit holder or designated professional spray service. Permit holder to spray 50 feet beyond the perimeter of the crushing area, crushed gravel stockpile, earthen berms, service road, equipment, and refueling area. Weed control is pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 38-22. General compatibility with adjacent properties. Comprehensive plan met for the agricultural district. H, none stated. See number 3A above. I, none stated. J, none stated. Brookings County, number 4, the Brookings County Zoning Commission further determines a condition as conditional use upon the following special conditions or safeguards for the setbacks. Crusher pile to be 50 feet from the property lines, 100 feet setback from public right-of-way, 200 feet from any residence. Changes to 100 feet from all sides of the cemetery. Dust control such as magnesium chloride or like products in the driveway, entrance, exits, and loading areas as needed. Hours of operation be 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday and 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. D, crushed or processed gravel pile to follow industry guidelines for safety requirements concerning the height and diameter of the pile. E, reclamation plan on file with the Brookings County Development Office. F, entrance gates to each side, each to the site. To be padlocked. South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources crushing permit required on file with the Brookings County Development Office. Conditional use is good for 5 years. Expires May 5, 2025. You wanted to add.
Would it be out of line to ask that the cemetery inform Mr. Sturzinger when there's going to be a burial? Just so they're not constantly having to watch the cemetery?
Right.
Okay.
We'll put that in the cemetery. What's the name of the association? 'What was the name again? $3 soon, long enough? By the time usually it's about 3 days, time you know there's a burial, to give him adequate time to adjust his operation. Yep. Yep, that's, just from experience, I'm in your same position on another local cemetery, and it's about 3 days, if not longer, that you get notified. And sure, yep, as soon as you get notified, you could let them know. Anything else? Oh, we gotta limit that to the northwest. Thank you. Anything else?
Nothing else for the finding of the facts. Richard, would you call the roll?
Dietrich,
Aye.
Vanderwall,
Aye.
Kleinjohn,
Aye.
Jensen,
Yes.
Erickson, Bartley,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
McHugh,
Aye.
and Ford.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item number 15, department reports.
Yes, this morning the county commission discussed opening this building up again, so as of right now, tentatively, they're looking at May 18th. So maybe at the June meeting, hopefully you won't with a key. We're asking that all the farmers in the field be safe as the world is going back to the new normal, whatever the new normal is. You're going to see more vehicles on the road. If you've had your tractors out the last few weeks, you may have seen less cars than typical. We do expect that to turn around, and if nothing else, to be a bunch of looky-loos out there trying to get fresh air or something. So just be aware, because you know they're not going to be aware of you. We do expect the 6-foot rule to be around for a long time. Matter of fact, that may become the new rule. If you're just BSing or meeting someone at the store or something like that, chances are they're going to recommend that we step back and stay away from each other for a while. Shaking hands, that may be a semi-thing of the past. I guess we'll have to see what happens there. We still have normal coughs, colds, flu, everything that we have every year, especially when the season turns warm and then cold and warm. But we also still have the COVID-19, and that's going to be with us for we don't know how long. But the good thing is, once the vaccine is done, Brookings County will be set up to give the vaccine once it's available, and we'll make sure you're informed of when that is. And that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to the IT people for helping us with the phone system today. I might say Mr. Mueller may be on the phone. If he is, he loves to talk. You might invite him to say a word or two.
We're just going through, it'll be, I don't know if we'll, depending on if there'll be a joint meeting next month or not, we'll just have to play it by ear. If we are, we'll let you know when the date and time of that will be.
I don't need to.
Otherwise, that's about all I got. We're working on the subdivision ordinance, getting that'll be coming up here shortly. Probably some bylaws updates coming up here possibly next month. So otherwise, that's all that I got for right now. Thank you.
Is there any need for an executive session?
No, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vanderwall, second by Bartley. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Oh.
Aye.
Erickson. Okay, thank you. Nelson.
Aye.
Kleinjohn.
Aye.
Jensen.
Yes.
McHugh.
Aye.
Vanderwall.
Aye.
Dietrich.
Aye.
And Ford.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Motion carried.